So one thing that I'm aware has been like a topic of contention in the booktube community, and I'm not sure how real the controversy is, but it's how valid audiobooks and ebooks are, and also what people think about them. And I finally had someone ask me about ebooks a couple days ago, and it's a question that it's contention if I figure I'll get asked more, so I'm making a video on this topic now. And basically, so audiobooks, I have auditory processing disorder, and I also, even if I'm playing an audiobook like double speed, I can still pretty much always read faster than listening to an audiobook on 2x speed. So I don't really do audiobooks. When I was younger, my parents got books on tape that we would listen to on family car rides. And as I mentioned, my father got me Designing Your Life, and he also got me the audiobook of that, or the book on CD of that. And that worked for me, but that was sort of specific to that book. And in Austin, like I was driving a lot of short trips where that worked very well with the way that book was structured. But in general, I don't find audiobooks nearly as accessible as physical books. And then when it comes to ebooks, so I like the embodied nature of physical books better. Obviously, ebooks, you can fit a lot more in, they give you more control. And one thing I agree with fans of ebooks on is the experience of reading an ebook is more frictionless. But I don't actually think that's a good thing, for me at least, because I have trichotillomania, compulsive hair plucking, and that's why I grew the beard, was to stop plucking the head up my face. But I notice when I pluck hair that I don't want to pluck, like disproportionately, it's if I'm reading on my e-reader, because it is so frictionless that my hands are looking for other things to do, whereas the embodied nature of a physical book, I'm not doing that. That said, I do find ebooks better for travel, and that frictionless nature is helpful for like airports or airplanes where there's more distractions going on around me, and also for hotels for the first couple nights where it takes me longer to settle in. And then like when I lived abroad, I could not bring enough physical books, and it was not easy to find the books I wanted to read in English, so I read pretty much exclusively ebooks. And then the other thing about ebooks is I am extremely, extremely anti-DRM. Like, I consider it a moral issue. I will not even read, like, I've seen free ebooks with DRM, and I will not even read those. It is defective by design, and I will not support it in any way. And the good thing for me is I read a lot of public domain books, which you can get from Gutenberg usually, and a lot of the books that I read are from specialty publishers who will do ebooks DRM free. So like I have all of Jack Vance's work as DRM free ebooks, but that's because whenever his work is traditionally published, when it's not print on demand published, it always sells out and then goes expensive on the used market, and yet somehow publishers haven't taken it as a sign to keep. His books are physically in print through print on demand, and the quality is not awful, but it's still not the quality I would like in a physical book, so I haven't bought up all his books there. I would rather have physical copies of all of his books if I could. Yeah, so I prefer physical books in general. There are use cases that I find ebooks accessible. I think it's definitely the case that ebooks are as much books as physical books. The experience of reading the written word is going to be pretty much the same. I am not sure. People process information auditorily differently. Most people supposedly process information they hear better than information they read. So it could be that audiobooks actually people retain more information than physical books. So I'm not saying they're not books, but it's not the same experience. And one of the last papers for a reading group I did in undergrad that we read was on primary versus secondary orality. And the argument is that, so primary orality is you have this culture of like Homer telling the Odyssey, right? Like these long narrative poems that you memorize. And then you learn to write, so you become literate. And then secondary orality is when you have a literate culture which stops reading, which is where we seem to be heading now. So I think if you're listening to audiobooks in addition to reading physical books or ebooks for that matter, and I would still count that as a book, but if you're exclusively listening to audiobooks and otherwise you're listening to like podcasts and YouTube, that is, in terms of like maintaining literacy, that is, I don't know. I've been hearing a lot about people struggling with literacy and reading, so I don't know that I would count someone who is exclusively listening to audiobooks as reading, but I think it would depend on how much information do they get. And there are certainly people I've seen who read even physical books who still don't get what the book is saying. So I'm not like snobbish about it, but I'm not as ready as a lot of people to say, no, an audiobook is indistinguishable from an ebook or a physical book, both because of my own auditory processing disorder and because of this issue of primary and secondary orality, at least with people who are exclusively listening and aren't reading. If you can't read like long form content on the page, I would say that's kind of an issue for literacy, but I would still say it depends on how well you're retaining the information and understanding what is being said, but it's not the same modality as a book. Whereas ebooks, I would say, I find the experience more frictionless, and that is a bad thing most of the time, but a good thing in environments that are high friction themselves. But I would still say that's still a book, because that's still, you're reading it. It's still encouraging developing literacy. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'm Magpie, this is Leela, and I'll see y'all in the next one.